Welcome to our Leadership Dialogues, where we've been focusing on reimagine financial services. We've been exploring topics across reinvigorating payments, refreshing customer journeys, and also rethinking the ecosystem. And today we'll be focusing on cloud and new business models and how these will transform the industry. And I'm delighted to have Michael Mueller with me today, CEO of Form3. And Michael, before we get started, I'd love to hear a little intro from you about yourself and Form3.
Sure. Good morning, Ben. As you said, I'm the CEO and founder of Form3. I'm a banker by background, a transaction banker. So I've always worked in payments throughout my career. And about almost exactly 5 years ago, we started Form3 really with the mission to change the way that payment technology is delivered to regulated financial institutions. We are, as I said, 5 years old. We have about 250 people on the team. We are in more than 20 countries, so fully remote. And we're building a lot of exciting payment back office technology, as I said, mainly for banks, payment service providers and fintechs.
Fantastic. I mean, it's such an exciting period for you and such rapid growth over a short period of time. And look, Michael, we've spoken over the past sort of year, and it's been a bit of a tumultuous year for the industry, to say the least. I'm interested to get your thoughts on, what have you seen in the past sort of 18 months? What trends do you think will persist? And which do you think are probably fairly unique to the past 18-month experience we've had?
I think there are a number of different things sort of overlapping. There are interesting trends in payments, of course. First of all, the payments market is growing rapidly still. And I think part of that is fueled by the move from cash to non-cash payments. Secondly, real-time payments are taking over basically across the world. So in the UK, we're quite used to the faster payment system and payments being executed in real time. Other countries are a little bit further behind, but I think throughout many countries in the world, there are new clearing settlement systems implemented. And I think we see a wholesale migration from ACH to or 3-day settlement cycles to real-time payments. On the other side, we have interesting developments on the technology side. Those started well before the pandemic, but in many ways, I think they have accelerated. And I think there's very good evidence now for a trend in financial services that sees banks transfer a lot of their technology estate into the cloud. Transfer a lot of on-premise deployments into cloud-native technologies. And I think there's recognition now in a post-pandemic world that sitting on proprietary data centers in various locations might not be the best way for financial service providers to manage their tech. So again, very exciting times from a payments perspective, and payments have really moved into focus here, and from a technology point of view. The third aspect that I would mention is liquidity. There is a lot of investment that goes into payments, and that is fintech, so new providers. And I think we've all seen some of the recent valuations in the market of payment service providers, some of them now bigger than legacy banks. But also payment technology. So I think there's a genuine sort of push for overhauling infrastructures in financial services, and we're very happy to be part of that.
Yeah, completely agree with that. I mean, that's something we also see very much, firsthand. I guess a natural question to that, Michael, is from your relatively unique position and what Form3 do. What common challenges have you seen financial institutions have faced when adopting new technologies? And can you share any tips or insights on what's worked well and how they've overcome those challenges?
Well, I think many of our customers are still on the journey, and it isn't an easy journey, but it's a necessary one. So, if you ask ourselves, why are they changing anyway? So what are the pressure points that we're seeing? And I hope you will agree, a lot of what we're seeing in the market are sort of serious concerns about security, resilience, and performance of legacy architecture, not to mention cost. So I think there is a concern in particular in banks that if they don't modernize their estate today, they will lose out, and they will be faced with more outages, more technical issues, maybe greater risk, but certainly cost pressures that are coming in where new providers have much more efficient payment back office systems. You asked about the challenges, of course. Any tech overhaul, brings its own unique challenges. When we started 5 years ago, there were probably a lot of concerns about the use of the cloud, in particular the public cloud, and how that would work from a security and performance perspective. There were certainly regulatory concerns around, will the regulator allow mission critical systems to live in public cloud environments? You would obviously look at migration challenges. So how do you make sure that moving from one setup to another doesn't create massive risk? Payments are unfortunately one of those products that need to be on all the time, in particular in the real-time environment. So you can't miss a beat when you're cutting over. Now, over the past 5 years, I think the environment has changed. I think most of our customers would recognize that there's really no alternative to cloud-native technology. And when I say cloud-native technology, it doesn't mean it needs to run in the public cloud. What I mean by that is component-based architecture, platform-based architecture that can be assembled relatively easily through the use of APIs to create an end customer journey. So I think it has become a standard, and I think the regulator and the Bank of England and the European Central Bank and others have recognized that. It's very hard to buy technology today that is not cloud native, and that means there is a very open dialogue between the big banks and the regulator about the safe use of these systems. From a migration and implementation point of view, I think recognition is that with component-based architecture, you don't necessarily run those migration projects as a big bang. So you don't need to cut off your entire payment estate on day one over a weekend as you used to. You can actually phase in new technology, component by component, payment type by payment type, source code by source code, and therefore make it a lot safer to transition to cloud-native technology.
Touched on certainly the regulator a few times there, Michael, and again, that's something you and I have talked about quite a lot over the past couple of years. And if I reflect on attitudes, say even 2 years ago, there was more uncertainty around the transition to cloud and how that could be regulated, and importantly, how the banks can show that they are safe and secure in that cloud environment. I mean, how have you seen those attitudes, I guess, change over the past couple of years? And are you positive about how the regulatory world will evolve to support cloud over the coming years?
Yeah, there is, in my view at least, there is a lot more knowledge and a lot more awareness of the various aspects of what we're talking about here. So I think those frameworks are emerging. And of course, any large-scale technology transformation in a bank will require regulatory approval. And those approvals will have to be based on a thorough review of the target infrastructure. And in fact, in many instances, for instance, with our products, well-defined outsourcing rules would apply. So there are procedures for this, and that means we have more certainty around how it will all work from a regulatory approval perspective. One particular concern has certainly come in more lately, and in particular, the Bank of England has become quite vocal in this space, and that is dependency on large public cloud providers, which is a concern. The I think the public cloud world is dominated by less than a handful of major providers, and entire economies being dependent on those is a concern that the authorities are looking at more closely. We believe that we have a good answer for that, and that is that our stack will be completely cloud agnostic, which basically means it will be very easy for our customers to decide where it should live, and that could include public cloud, but also private cloud rollouts, which basically gives our customers the flexibility to prove that if they're no longer comfortable with working with one public cloud provider, they can move to another. As a matter of fact, we're building it in a way that the environment lives in different public clouds in parallel, so that we can actually cut over on a dynamic basis. So this is going to be a very interesting topic in the next few years. How will major financial institutions build platforms that don't mean that they're heavily dependent on a number of mainly American public cloud providers?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the other points you made, which I'm interested to get your view on, is also this transformation journey. So obviously a big proportion of the challenge is not so much the tech and the tin, it's about the people, the culture, the actual transformation element of this. I'd love to get your views as to how important it is to work with organizations who are already working in an agile way versus those that may be more traditional waterfall. Do you see that as a big dependency in how successful these transformation programs are?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that there is, for many organizations that we're working with, introducing technology like ours is not only a tech project, it's also a sort of change in the culture and how they run it. I think the key aspects of this are that most of the cloud native technologies out there are actually platform based, which basically means a number of different customers sit on the same platform and effectively use the same code. Heavy customizing that we've seen in previous decades around sort of on-premise technology is no longer the way to go. Actually, our customers tell us, we don't want you to customize. We want this to be future-proof. We want you to manage, any new initiatives around the sort of new payment architecture, ISO 20022, or whatever the industry is throwing at banks needs to be handled at platform level, which basically makes it future-proof. So there is a bit of a change there. You can no longer necessarily define the exact details of how that platform works. On the other hand, you have things like continuous deployment. So we're having very interesting conversations about sort of maintenance releases and things like that. And a platform like ours would see new releases on a daily basis. So we constantly introduce new code to the platform, and that is managed in a way that we never have to take the platform down. So the good old days where you basically have quarterly big releases where you take everything down, inform all of your customers that you'll be out for a couple of days, and then you come back on, those days are clearly gone. There are a few other challenges in that transition, how you use the tool chain, how you set up your teams. Agile is obviously coming in versus Waterfall. So how do you manage the integration of an agile platform with a legacy environment that was built on different technology foundations? And for us, it is very interesting and exciting to work with system integrators and consultants who can actually help us build that bridge. And more importantly, as a technology provider, help us stay out of the sort of the complexity on the customer side.
So Michael, one final question, if I may, before we close. So look, given where you are, your position in the industry, in the next 2 years, what are the things that excite you most about where the industry is going? And also, are there any technology providers out there that aren't Form 3 who you also are quite excited about and keen to understand more of.
Yeah, I think if you look at the evolution of payments and payments technology, I think we are on that journey, in particular in account-based payments, where we're still looking at what could be described as a cottage industry. So every single bank is sort of manufacturing payments in their own way, with their own tech stack, in a very sort of opaque manner. Now, the opportunities that arise from transferring those processes onto a platform are massive. They start with, making, or the ability to make payments smarter, to add more payment workflows to what is a very short and very quick payments journey. So these systems run in less than 100 milliseconds all the time. But there's room for improving fraud prevention. There's room for applying other functional procedures to the payments that we wouldn't necessarily process. So there are a lot of interesting concepts out there that use artificial intelligence and data in a different way within the life cycle of a payment that just make payments a lot more intelligent. And that's kind of what excites me, where we can use those integrated infrastructures to add value to the payment processing itself. In recent years, all innovation in payments has taken place in the front end. Mobile applications and e-commerce there's a whole range of new ways in which you can actually initiate a payment. There's not been too much innovation in the back end. So for us to look at data, for instance, a lot more actively, to figure out how data can transform the way that our customers deliver their products to their clients. These are all interesting developments, and in many ways the payments industry is behind compared to what we're seeing in other parts of the economy. And for us to be part of a journey where we make payments more intelligent, more real-time, where we leverage the platform in a different way, and also the fact that component-based architecture can incorporate Form 3 and non-Form 3 elements in a very dynamic way, is an exciting prospect. So for me, been in payments for close to 30 years, it is undoubtedly the most exciting period in my professional career. So it's a really great time to be in payments.
You're talking to the converted on that one, Michael, which I think it is a really exciting time. Look, thanks so much for taking the time to take part in our leadership dialogue, Michael. It's been an absolute pleasure as ever. And for those who've watched this, there's lots of content still coming out as part of our Reimagine Financial Services campaign. Do get in touch. Michael, thanks again.
Thanks for having me.